Cats have a special place in our minds, and they seem to divide a lot of people into people that love cats and people that don't like cats. Regardless if you do like cats or not, they seem to fascinate us with their coy attitude, independent nature, and soundless, extraordinary way to move. And they seem to have fascinated us as long as they have been with us through the history. They show up in our history in Egypt's tombs as mummified corpses, portrayed in art both in Egypt, China, Japan, and Persia. They show up in the illuminations of our medieval documents, but they also have left very permanent real marks where they have stepped in ink and put paw prints all over a page, or where they have peed on a very expensive and carefully written document and caused a monk to have a complete rage and to write down a curse on all cats and also a warning to others not to leave out their work at night where cats can get to it. We find paw prints in Rome's concrete and in medieval bricks from Finland where cats have stepped in clay before it dried. Cats seems to have been with us for a long time, ruining things but also both worshipped and feared. To cover almost all of the cat lore that is around the world, you need hours for a video. If you speak Swedish, I highly recommend you to find the YouTube channel När man talar om trollen, which also exists as a podcast called Oknytt. They have an almost 3-hour-long video where they talk about the cat in folklore and myth. As usual, you will find the link in the description down below. I will not talk for 3 hours, so I will try and shorten this and concentrate on just Scandinavia and its cat's history in the folklore. Let's start where we always start, the Younger Iron Age, or what we also called the Viking Age. We have a lot of archaeological evidence that the people during the Younger Iron Age had cats. Probably the ancestors to the Norwegian forest cat. Huge cats that has a thick and long fur that goes very well with surviving in our colder climate up here. The Vikings took their cats with them on their raids and their trading trips, and there has been a lot of graves with cat bones in them. There is even a grave from Björkö where the cat seems to have been buried alone, burnt in an urn that was buried with female grave gifts around it. Cats also show up in the Viking mythology. There is the story where Thor and Loki is visiting Utgard Loki, a very cunning giant that knew a lot of magic. Thor and Loki is challenged in different ways to show their strength, and Thor is challenged to lift Utgard Loki's cat. He lifts and he lifts, but the cat just gets longer. Finally, Thor gets so angry that he takes all the strength he has, and then he lifts it up, and the cat lifts one paw in the air. Utgard Loki then abruptly and very nervously break off the challenge because the cat is no other than Jörmungandr, the big serpent that is circling around the world, and the day he loses his grips on his own tail, Ragnarök will happen and the world will end. When the cat lifted one paw, that was Thor almost managed to release the tail from Jörmungandr's mouth. But there are more examples from the Icelandic tales where cats show up. When Fenris, the child of Loki that is a huge wolf, is bound, his magic bonds are made out of things that is supposed to not exist, bird's spit as an example. There is also mentioned that one of the ingredients is the sound from when cat walks. Freya is perhaps the most famous of the Aesir gods when we speak about cats and the Vikings, since it is said that she has a chariot drawn by cats. If you do a quick search on the internet, people are very sure about what kind of cats these are, what their names are, and how they look and how many they are. Some say it could be Norwegian forest cats that we know followed the Vikings on their ships. Some say it could be lynx cats, big cat animals that live up wild in the forest of the north. This is not something we actually know though. And we need to remember also that the word cat can mean a lot of things, not just your furry little overlord that lives in your home, also known as Felis familiaris, or in some cases Felis interruptus, at least when it comes to my furry overlord. So when it comes to Freya's cats, it's hard to know exactly if that is a cat, a lynx, or even something completely different as a bear or a stoat. The cats are called reisirkatter in some places, which could mean röskatter, and that is a very old word for stoat. But we also have the goddess Kybele from the Greek mythology that has a chariot drawn by 2 lions. Snorre, that wrote the saga that described Freya and her cats, might have been inspired by that mythology. Or is this something that comes from the general Indo-European mythology further back? Again, we do not know so much about this, more than what Snorre is describing. There are sadly no runestones with cats and Freya as far as I know. There is a stone with a lynx and her cub though, and that is from the 9th century and is placed in Sparlösa in the west part of Sweden. Lynx also show up in even older sources. In older Iron Age graves we find that while men usually were buried on bearskins, women were buried on lynx fur. But what makes it so impossible to say what kind of cats Freya actually had is that we also see a lot of graves from the younger Iron Age where especially women were buried with cats, because we have found a lot of cat bones in some graves. And there it seemed to be high status women because they have very pretty things of gold and other rich grave goods with them. We also have the famous Oseberg's ship burial, where 1 or possibly 2 women are buried. There's an almost complete wagon among the grave goods, and that wagon is covered in cats as patterns. Cats seem to always have been connected with 2 things, women and magic. That seems to go for both here in Scandinavia and in other parts of the world. In Egypt's tomb paintings, you often see cats sitting under the chair of the highest ranking lady in the painting. As I already mentioned, up here in Scandinavia we have Freya with a connection both to cats, and she is absolutely connected to magic. There are even stories that tell that she was the one that taught Odin to do seid, a kind of magic that seems to be very much connected to women. There is also a story in one of the Icelandic sagas about a very powerful seid woman that is described as having a hood lined with cat fur and wearing cat fur gloves. When Christianity comes into play, the view of the cat changes. There are theories that this is because of the connection between cats, Freya and magic, and the church did not like either Freya nor magic. That was not according to God's rightful path. So cats are one of the beings where you can see a rather drastic change, where they go from something that seems to be a positive, although mysterious thing, to something that is connected to more or less pure evil instead. People, of course, still named their cats, cuddled with them and kept them around, and was very much depending on them to keep rats and mice out of their food storage. That didn't change. And the connection between women and cats did not change either. But now the connection was more in the concept of witches. Witches had so-called servant spirits, and they were often in the shapes of big cats. Very often grey or black, but they could be all kinds of colors, just as cats can come with, well, all kinds of colors. During the witch hysteria, it almost got dangerous to keep cats in your house if you were a single living woman, because that could be used against you as proof that you were a witch. But cats in general seem to have been connected to the devil, which of course stems from that idea that you are either under God or the devil. There is no in-between in the medieval Christian church. And if you count out the older connection between cats and Freya, because that was just up here in Scandinavia and not in the rest of the Christian world, the rest of the Christian world seems to deem cats as evil. And it's not actually so hard to understand why. Cats are, as we stated, very independent creatures. They are night active and have eyes that reflect light. That makes the eyes look like they glow. All cat owners that ever try to take a cute picture of their cat probably know what I'm talking about. We cat owners usually have a bunch of photos with what looks like little demon with glowing eyes. Cat's soundless nature also connects them with magic. Again, as a cat owner, there has been so many times I have been 100% convinced that my little furry overlord was outside, but when I reached into the cabinet to get a new towel, I screamed in terror because out of what looks like complete magic, there was my cat laying sleeping. Cats appear and disappear without us humans always hearing how they got there. Cats also has a tendency to play with their food, act like they don't give a shit about us, but in the next moment watching us like they are trying to pierce our very souls. The sound a cat can give away, especially if you hear it during a dark, spooky night, can be indeed scary. So I don't find it strange that cats are connected to magic and sorcery, and when the Christianity came into play, also the devil rather than God. Because of this, cats shows up in a lot of folklore and folk magic up here in Scandinavia. The most widely known today is perhaps the Yule cat, Jólaköttur, from Iceland. The Yule cat shows up in writing as late as 19th century, and was said to eat all the children that hadn't got new clothes for Christmas. These stories was used to put pressure on the farmers to finish all their work with their wool before Christmas. It is usually said that the Yule cat has an ancient origin. I have not found any sources that actually points to that. Not more than that the cat in some stories is connected to the giant woman called Gryle, and it is supposed to be her house cat. And she does show up in the Edda from the 13th century as some kind of sorceress. And again we can see a connection with cats and something female and also witches. If this means the cat actually is something from the Icelandic folklore that is older, or that this was invented and spread when the wool industry was on its high peak, that is something we however don't know. Black cats in particular was believed to be a bad omen, and still today we have a lot of peculiar thoughts about black cats. A common way to protect yourself if you saw a black cat crossing the road was to spit 3 times. There was also a belief that if a cat breathed into your mouth while you were sleeping, you would die, so cats was during a long time forbidden to enter people's bedrooms. To be honest, I have had both black and grey cats, and the striped orange kitty I have right now. All of them have slept in my bed during the years, and I have so far not noticed that I am dead. 1 or 2 ticks in the bed has appeared though. Joke aside, there are also talk about cats being used in some rather horrifying folk medicine. A lot of cats was killed for the purpose of healing people, sometimes burned alive, which was thought to be healing shaking limbs. It was also used as a sacrifice to the being Näcken and drowned to both protect people from being taken by Näcken and drown themselves, but also to pay Näcken his tutorial fee, so he would teach you how to play a fiddle. And the so-called falling sickness in children, which we now call epilepsy, was believed to be cured by giving the child cat poop to eat. Yum. And also, that must have made the poor child really sick. Cats was also very common as a shape for supernatural beings to use. Trolls was often seen as cats, and so was the Vettir, elves, and sometimes even the mistress of the mountain. A very common shape for the being Mare, a being that gave you nightmares, was a black or a grey cat. A thing I found interesting is that our tomte, the house spirit that probably is very old, seemed to have a nice relationship with the cats. This might have several explanations. Perhaps since tomten is a helping spirit on the farm, and one can guess that the farmers was not so scared of their own cat at least, since they were still very much dependent on them for keeping rats and mice in check. Perhaps this is a leftover from the Iron Age, where we have indication that the tomte also stems from. Freya was considered to be very connected to the home and also something powerful and positive. This is just my own ideas though, and why it is like this, we as usually don't really know. We can only speculate. To end this video, that really is way too short for such a big subject, I am going to tell you a story that has a version of it spread around almost all of Europe. This version of the story is from a place called Skinnskatteberg in Västmanland in Sweden. And the person telling the story said that this was told by their own grandma, so hence it must be true, because grandma would never lie. The grandma and grandpa has gotten one of those cats that just shows up out of nowhere and decide to stay on their farm. It was a good cat, but one time it was sitting on the kitchen table and grandpa comes in and tells grandma, "There was such a strange thing happening. When I was walking past Dromborgs mountain, I could hear a voice calling from the mountain. It said, "Tell Mons to come home because Casericus is dead." And when Grandpa said that, the big cat on the table threw himself out of the window and ran towards the forest, and they never saw it again. Because that was the troll's cat, and he had understood what Grandpa had said, and that it was worse for him to come home. I so hope you enjoyed this little video about cats in Scandinavian folklore. Please do check out my Patreon page and my Ko-fi page if you want to support my little channel. And if you own a cat, or as we sometimes say it, is owned by a cat, do take care of that little furry demigod you have there in your home, because you can't really be sure that it isn't a transformed troll, or perhaps even one of Freya's cats. Thank you for listening, stay safe, and remember to give your cats a little extra treat. See you next time, when I probably have to redeem this channel for all the dog owners and do an episode about dogs too.